Yeah, before we get to Purdue, I want to just take a few minutes, so bear with me, just to address the, unthinkable tragedy that happened on Tuesday to, our friend, but also our colleague, Christina Chambers. And I want to speak on it more for those that didn't really have the pleasure of knowing her and spending some time with her. Just, to kind of understand the type of person that she was. Twitter can be a tough place sometimes. But if you just go on there and you read all the testimonials and the things that have been said about her from, family, friends, coworkers, colleagues, complete strangers, one of the similar sentiments is that she was a light. Um, I don't know if that does her justice. She was a beacon. She was a luminary. Like she just lit up a room every time she walked into it. Um, and I think she was what we all should aspire to be on a day-to-day basis based on how she treated other people. And I think we can all learn something from the kindness that she displayed in her everyday life. And I mean, she was a true professional in every sense of the word. Um, she loved covering sports in this state, whether it be high school, college, men's, women's, whatever it was. She was on our run to our first Final Four in 2019, and she was in Kansas City and in San Antonio, or sorry, in Minneapolis. And hell, I think she was more excited to be there than we were. And you could just tell that based on just her daily interactions with us and with Coach, and she just took a lot of pride in what she did, and she did it at such a high level. Um, right now, just praying for her. That she can find some peace and her family, her friends, coworkers, her beautiful son, who she loves so dearly. Um, he's about to he's about to endure on a journey that no one should have to go through. Um, tweet out a GoFundMe on on Twitter, so anyone that is able to that can help him, please do. It's going to help pay for some of his educational stuff and opportunities moving forward. I hope her parents know that if he ever needs to come into our gym, he's always welcome. He's always got a ticket to the games. So she made this world a better place, and she made us all better people. So I'm gonna miss her a lot. All right, on to Purdue. They held their return 70% of their minutes, 80% of their scoring. Um, have two really good wins this year at Alabama and a 30-point win against Texas Tech. You look at they're the number one rated offense in college basketball. We've played three of the top seven ranked offenses in college basketball with Purdue or Michigan and Arizona as well. They're 13th nationally in rebounding margin. They're fifth in the country in assist turnover ratio. The more Ted puts these notes together, the more it makes me realize how freaking good they are. This is our fourth game against the AP top 10 team. So, a lot of teams that say that are getting 150 grand out of every one of their games that they play, and we're just, we're not getting that. So we're doing this we're intentionally doing this, which is great. So no, I mean, they're a hell of a team, and they're coached by a future Hall of Fame coach in Matt Painter. He does such a great job, and they just did a great job in adding some guys in the portal with Clough. Adds a different dimension to their team, and they're just big and rebound the ball at a high level. They got guys that can make shots. Braden Smith's probably the best passer in college basketball and been one of the best passers in college basketball for a long time. He does so many things, that can really just break down defenses, and he gets all those guys so involved. Trey Kaufman-Renn is just such a he's a beast down there and just does so many things. And he's probably the best short roll player in all of college basketball. Anytime he catches it there, he's going to score it or he's going to facilitate it. So they present a lot of challenges. They've made more free throws than their opponents have attempted, which is going to be something that we got to key on because we do a great job of getting to the foul line. They do a great job of guarding without fouling. So playing in Indianapolis will basically be a road game. So obviously going to have it's going to be a tremendous opportunity for us to play, a team that has been picked by most people to go to the Final Four. So great opportunity for our guys to kind of see where we're at.
Stephen, you talked last week about after the Chattanooga game that you needed a good week of practice and guys need to step up and get that effort. How do you feel? You still got time for the Purdue game, but how do you feel like they've done this week, kind of answering that challenge?
Yeah, Monday and Tuesday were good. I thought we haven't gone long, but we've gone hard. For an hour and a half every day, Monday and Tuesday, just really trying to break down what they do offensively, and just trying to figure out how to cover it. Because you watch last year's film and you think, oh, that's the recipe. Well, we don't have the same team as last year, so it's not the recipe. So we got to get a little more creative in what we're doing. So that's been a challenge because I think what we did last year was very effective, but this team can't really execute that because we don't have the same size that last year's team did and the same rim protection. So we got to get creative. But I thought Monday and Tuesday our guys did a good job, brought really good energy. We're locked in, engaged, and I thought we got better those first 2 days of the week.
You kind of mentioned it, but this is basically the fourth team y'all played this season that was either number one at some point or analytically number one. What have you learned the most from those three previous matchups that don't different kinds of results? What would you say you learned the most about your team from those?
Well, what I've learned is I'm going to fire whoever did our schedule. No, I mean they're all different teams. I think Houston playing them in Birmingham. I felt like we had a team and a roster that could physically and athletically really compete with them. I thought we matched up well with them. Michigan and Arizona they're just different animals. They're different beasts. And you look at, they're beating everyone by 20 and 30 points. And, so, I mean, we got to do a better job of not having so many self-inflicted wounds in those games to be able to keep those games more competitive, to give ourselves a chance late in the game. But I just think those two are just different beasts. The problem is Purdue is one of those beasts too, right? They have that similar size. They have really good guard play. So I think it'll be good to have experienced what we experienced in the Michigan and Arizona games and all the things that happened that allowed for them to get big leads in those games. And we got to figure out how not to do that in another tough environment against Purdue. So the fact that we've played, I would say three elite teams, two elite teams and another couple really really good teams. I think understanding. When we turn the ball, when we have live ball turnovers that lead to transition, and when we take bad shots, that gives their offense the confidence that it needs in order for them to build those leads up. So for us, we got to do a good job of limiting those things to try and keep the game, manageable through the first 30, and then the last 10, all the pressure gets switched over to them.
How's KO doing after getting shut down that second half against Chattanooga? And on top of that, if you're having him back, like how key is that because of how good that Purdue backcourt is, especially with what you've been saying to your perimeter defense really these last few games?
Yeah, he practiced Monday and Tuesday. Still a little, still getting treatment on it every day. You can tell, still favoring it a little bit, but not a ton. He'll be fine. He'll be good to go Saturday. And obviously we're going to need him. You could tell that it was bothering him in the first 10 minutes of the Chattanooga game because he just got hit on screens a few times and just stopped, whereas most of the time he would make multiple efforts to get to his man and he just couldn't do it. So, we needed to shut him down in the second half just because I just don't think he could have been the best version of himself out there. So, and I said this after Michigan, in order for us to beat the best teams on our schedule, he's got to be really good. So in order for us to win on Saturday, we need KO to be really good on both ends of the floor.
You mentioned after the Chattanooga game, it's tough right now, not just because of guys that aren't in the rotation, but just like Alec Omeka not having them in practice. With y'all ending this first semester at school, do you guys at all look for potential players you could add in this meantime? Like, what does that process look like for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, we're always looking. One of the things that I think people need to understand is bigs don't just grow on trees. They're hard to find, but based on the new rules, the NCAA has roster limits now, And how our roster is broken down, it's 13 scholarship players, 2 walk-ons, and 3 designated student athletes. So we can't just kick someone off and bring someone else in, even if it's a medical redshirt situation. Like, the only way we would have been able to replace somebody with a medical redshirt is if it had happened before the first game. So they could play the first game, blow their knee out for the rest of the year, and you're stuck with that roster spot. You can't replace it. So this is the first year of that rule being in place, to my knowledge. So that's something that we're navigating. We're trying to figure out if there's any exceptions to any of the rules based on what we have. But as of right now, we're kind of locked into the guys that we have on this roster. But also looking to explore to see if there's any potential possibility of bringing in a JUCO mid-semester to give us another body up front, because we need it. We only have 4 bigs right now. Part of our thought process this summer is our scout team, and you guys have been to practice. You guys recognize how important our scout team is just for our preparation. So we felt like it was important to have those spots filled so we could give our guys a good look as far as what our opponents do week in and week out. Moving forward, I would probably keep one of those spots open just in case of a situation like this, so we can fill it moving forward. So something that obviously we got to learn from moving forward.
You guys have been effective this season at getting to the free throw line and getting points there. Purdue, like you mentioned, one of the best teams in the country at not allowing teams to get to the free throw line. I guess, what kind of challenges do they present in that area, and how do you, I guess, kind of get around that?
Yeah, I mean, they do a great job of walling up at the rim and getting vertical and not slapping down. And they're very well coached. They're very disciplined. So that's where that comes from. So for us, it's about understanding when you have an advantage and then going and playing off 2 feet. If you play off of 1 foot, you're going to get absolutely nothing, and that's when bodies are on the floor and they get out in transition. Or when you penetrate, if it's closed off, like dribble through, or our guys on the perimeter got to relocate and give us an easy pass out when we don't have anything at the rim. So while I've been up here talking about how we're giving teams points in transition because guys go in, play off 1 foot, and they're on the floor. If you look at the 3 guys on the perimeter around them, they didn't move. So it makes it really hard to give that person an outlet. So in this game, we got to go in, play off of 2 feet, be physical through contact, and look to finish and not draw a foul. And if you get a foul, great. But if we don't have anything, our guys on the perimeter have got to move in the direction of the ball to give that person an outlet, and we got to be willing to throw that outlet to get to the second side of the action. So that's kind of how you got to play off 2 feet, and then you got to move on the perimeter to get open when they don't have anything.
You mentioned TKR, Clough, and the 7-4 kid they're bringing in now too. When you play a front court like that, knowing that you don't have the size that you guys had last year, what are the keys kind of for those guys to be able to impact the game, knowing that it's not the same as, like you said, the same recipe as last season?
Yeah, you just got to use your speed and your quickness and your activity more than anything. You got to kind of err on the side of being aggressive instead of just letting them run their stuff. I'm not going to go too much into detail, because I'm sure Coach Painter or someone on his staff watches these, which would be smart, because you guys ask such great detailed questions on the scouting report. You got to be aggressive. You can't sit behind the post in this game. You just can't, because if you do, like, Clough is going to do what he did against Marquette and go 8 for 8 and score layups every single time, or Kaufman Wren's going to just kind of bully you under the rim, and if he doesn't make it, he's going to go rebound it and finish it. So just got to be aggressive. Got to use your speed and your quickness to your advantage, and just try and be disruptive.